I'm seeing it go live on my screen. Thank you. And welcome to the League of Women Voters of Snohomish County's panel presentation on the Snohomish County Charter Review Commission. We are so pleased that you are here. I'm Carin Crowley, a member of the League, and we are joined in this presentation by a distinguished group of panelists. I'm going to introduce them in just a moment, but I want to start with a few instructions on how we're going to step through our time together. As you all know, this presentation is being live streamed to our League YouTube channel. So to those of you in the virtual space, we're glad you're here. Thanks for joining us. Now, we've allowed an hour for the presentation and discussion, and we're going to welcome your questions. So you're probably saying, Carin, how do I ask questions? Use the chat function in the YouTube stream at any time to ask a question. So if questions come to you while we're stepping through this information, just drop it in chat. And another League member, Carin Madsen, is monitoring chat, and she will let us know and we'll get your questions answered. So please just drop them in as you think of them, and we will have time during the presentation to stop to answer those questions. But before we begin, we want to find out how much you actually know about the Charter Review Commission. So I'm going to give you three options. And I'm going to ask you to drop into chat the number that best represents your level of knowledge as you join us today and are listening. And you see those questions on the screen. So option number one, you know almost nothing. Carin, that's why I'm here. Or number two, maybe you know a little bit, but as you've been researching, you've got some questions. And so you want to learn more. Maybe you're at that number two level. Or maybe you're at number three and actually you know quite a lot, but you're coming to us tonight with some real questions. So tell us, are you a number one? Are you at the level two? Or are you at level three? If you drop that into chat now, we'll monitor that. And while you're giving us that information, let me introduce to you our panelists. And I'm just thrilled to have these folks with us tonight. So first, let me introduce to you Garth Fell. Garth is our Snohomish County Auditor, and he has led the office in Washington's third largest county. By the way, that is Snohomish County. We're the third largest county since 2020. He's a nationally certified elections administrator, and he has overseen over 100 elections during his 26-year-long career in county government. And Garth also serves as vice president of the Washington State Association of County Auditors and as a member of the Washington State Recording Standards Commission. Auditor Fell, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here.
We're glad you're here. All right, next, let me introduce you to Carin Chase. Carin Chase joins us as a past commissioner. She served on the 2016 Snohomish County Charter Review Commission, and she currently serves as the vice president of the Edmonds School District Board of Directors, and she's on the Washington State School Director Association. And in addition, Ms. Chase served on the Snohomish County Human Rights Commission from 2015 to 2022. Carin, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much, Carin, for the warm welcome. And thank you to the League for hosting this very important forum on the Charter.
I agree, and we're glad you're here. By the way, I believe that Human Rights Commission was created as a result of the Charter Commission in years back.
Well, as a matter of fact, it was enshrined into the charter in 2016 through the commission's proposals to the people and by the vote of the people of Snohomish County.
Yeah, didn't exist before. So it's a very real example of how an idea becomes a reality, and then you served on that very commission. So thanks for being with us. And finally, I want to introduce Liz Darrow. Liz comes to us from Whatcom County, where she really has just completed her term as the chair of the 2025 Whatcom County Charter Review Commission. So she has been doing this work all year. Liz defines herself as a community organizer. And when not serving as that commission chair, she actually works for the Food Justice Community to Community Development Project in Bellingham. Liz, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks so much, Carin, for having me.
And we're looking forward to what you have to tell us, because you've just gone through this process. And I think you're going to have a lot to share that's going to help Snohomish County voters make their decisions. So, all right. As I mentioned earlier, League member Carin Matson is monitoring chat to find out where you all are in terms of how much you know. Carin, do we have answers? What are people telling us out there? How much do they know? You know, that is great. You are in the right place, because we're going to give you information that we know is going to help. Okay, so keep putting those questions in chat. So let's dive in. And we've prepared some slides with some basic information about the Charter Review Commission. So by the way, I should tell you in the background, the person you're not seeing is Dave Moon. And I really need to give a shout out to Dave, because he's the technical director of Sultan School District. And Sultan School District is the one that makes all this technology possible for us and makes us look good. So Dave, I know you're in the background. Would you share that first? The applause. Garth is applauding. Would you share that first slide about the Charter Review Commission? So let me tell you this, that the Washington State Constitution actually describes two types of county governing structures. On the right, you see what's called a commission structure. So we have home rule and we have commission. And the commission structure, which is not Snohomish County, has in that structure, the county governing body usually consists of a 3-member board of commissioners. They're elected on a partisan basis, and they serve as the county's legislative body, and they perform executive functions. So that is a commission structure. Snohomish County adopted a home rule structure in 1980, when we collectively actually wrote and approved our charter. So the charter is actually the Snohomish County Constitution, if you will. And that charter describes how the county is to be governed and organized, such as the powers. It describes the county council, the county executive, and how officials are elected. So it's our county constitution. Washington has 7 charter counties, and they are Clallam, Clark, King, Pierce, San Juan, Whatcom, and Snohomish. And there are 10 charter cities: Seattle, Aberdeen, Bellingham, Bremerton, Everett, Spokane, Tacoma, Vancouver, Walla Walla, and Yakima. So the charter is being used around the state. And Carin and Liz, I don't know if you want to add anything. We're going to go through a little more about the charter, but it's fair to say that it's the county's constitution.
It really is. It really is. If you think about the charter as the people's constitution, this is a great way for people to able to engage directly at their governance.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that I think most of us don't think about. We all know there's rules of the road that govern what we do, but you don't think about what that actually is, and the fact that we wrote it ourselves. So let's go to the next slide, Dave. Next slide is going to show you we have 5 districts in Snohomish County, and I hope you all know which district you're in. If not, there are places you can go to discover that. That map is kind of small, but it shows you that we have five counties, and you see the 5 current sitting county council members. And so every 10 years, we are required by our own charter to actually review the charter. And each of these districts are going to be electing 3 commissioners. So we'll have a total of 15. And I want to show you by definition what the Charter Review Commission actually does. Dave, go ahead and bring up the next slide. So you see here the tasks of what the commissioners are going to do. And I'm going to ask Carin and Liz maybe to talk a little bit about these powers of the council. Would you tell us a little bit more about these steps that they're responsible for? And I'll ask Liz, you want to step in?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so to be totally honest, I didn't know much about the charter myself until it was coming up in our county, and that's when I learned about it. And so the basic tenets, like you said, the commission is tasked with reviewing the charter and finding out if there's anything in there over the last 10 years that maybe has shifted for our democracy. It is as a constitutional document. It doesn't deal with a lot of things that people would like to see changed in their county. But we do look at things such as what are the voting districts, what are the salaries of different county, the executive body, looking at some different rules that we can enact to try and help protect the people of the county. So yeah, and it's actually quite short. I have mine right here. It's just a little guy, but it's dense. It's got a lot in it. And so for our process, it really was just more about going through each chapter and just finding out, is there anything that we need to adjust or add or remove even that has changed over the last 10 years?
Yeah. Carin, you want to add anything to just the general overview of the commissioner's responsibilities?
Absolutely. And I think Liz gave a really good description of what the commissions do. In addition, what we did in Snohomish is also solicit input from the public, right? So we reviewed it, but then asked everybody to in the county to participate and share if they had some thoughts on what we may need to make amendments to, new proposals, things that, would best serve the changing times. We do this every 10 years.
And things change in 10
Mhm.
years. And yes, I have to say, I think you're talking to a real policy wonk who carries the charter, who has the charter at hand. Now, I know you came for this, but I don't know. I have a feeling Liz has that charter sitting on her desk so she can flip through it.
Honestly, I take it with me everywhere. It's because people will ask me when I'm out in the community about it, and I want to be able to sit down with them and look at it. And, a lot of changes can be semantic too. When the charter was first written in the 70s, we use different language for things. And so sometimes it's just a matter of sitting down and just understanding what it means and then looking more molecularly at what could be adjusted.
To that point, I want to say just the task even of reading the charter is so important. And just as an aside, I want to say that the League of Women Voters in Snohomish County 2 weeks ago, in celebration of Constitution Day, we actually went around the county in libraries and read the United States Constitution out loud and had different folks reading it. And there is something very powerful about simply reading our governing documents, because we talk about this all the time. And I will suggest that many of us have never read the documents. So it's a powerful thing to read the words that actually set up the structure by which we are governed. That's
Carin, I agree with you 100%. And we were talking about what makes a good Charter Review Commissioner. I think Liz embodies that.
Yes, indeed. So, all right, there for everybody watching, make sure that they have your commissioners have a copy of that charter at hand at all times.
And the Constitution.
Okay. And the Constitution. Yes. All right, Dave, could you hit the next slide or the next, let's advance the slide, because I just want to mention then the next couple of things that will happen, that we actually will be voting on the charter. And as I mentioned, 3 per district, and we're going to be using block voting, and Garth is going to explain this to us. And this will happen in the upcoming November general election. So let's just go through a couple of steps. The next slide, just to show you the timeline on how this all has unfolded. So in the next slide, you'll see that originally, of course, back in May, folks registered to be candidates. I mean, they're registering by district. We have 49 candidates for 15 positions. So they have been campaigning and their websites are up if they have them. And the next step, of course, then is that we will all be voting. We'll be looking at those candidates and we'll be voting on them. Dave, yep, in the November election. So we're going to stop sharing slides now, and I really want to hear from Garth, because it's an unusual occurrence for us to be voting for 3 people for one office. So Garth, would you please just explain to us how this is all going to work?
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, the elections process is outlined in the charter. So if you go to section 8.20 of the charter, it explains that we have 15 commissioners that will be elected, an equal number for each council district. So if we have 5 council districts, 5 goes into 15 3 times. The Charter Review Commission could change the number of commissioners, or it could change the makeup, and that's all subject to change. But currently, those are the instructions that we operate for the election. So candidates, as you mentioned, do run by district. They filed by district. So for instance, if you live in the north end of the county and are in Council District 1, you're going to have just candidates that live in your council district to vote on. And the candidates run on a nonpartisan basis. There will not be a party preference next to any candidate's name. And they're elected to a 1-year term. So in a minute, we'll take a look at the ballot and you'll be able to pick up all of those little details. And so the again, the candidates have to live in the district, and you have to live in the district in which in the same district for the candidates you're voting for. It is different in the sense that most of our elections are a vote for one, where we're voting for one single candidate. And here we're going to actually have voters, they're given the option to vote for up to 3 candidates in each commissioner race. And so let's do a quick screen share here and show you what the actual ballot will look like. And this is an example. So I think that's probably up on the screen now. And about right in about the center of the screen, you can see a race that says under the heading of County Nonpartisan, Snohomish County Charter Review Commissioner District 5. Every race that we put on the ballot has a term that's associated with it. So it says it's a regular 1-year term, which we, again, will find reference to in the charter itself. And then it says vote for 3. You have the list of candidates. The candidates are listed in the order in which they were randomly drawn. So we have a random selection process so that no, we're not doing it in alphabetical order or the order in which somebody filed for office. This gives everybody an equal shot to be at the top of the ballot or at the bottom of the ballot or anywhere in between. You'll also note that there is a write-in line. So I don't know if you can see that on the screen, but there's a write-in line available. And I will say about write-in candidates, state law does require that if you want to actually get votes as a write-in, you need to file as a declared write-in candidate. So if a voter puts something on that line that is an individual that's not a declared write-in candidate, we will not end up counting that vote for that write-in person. So make sure that you're voting for either candidates on the ballot or declared candidates if you want your vote to count. We actually won't even look at the write-in candidate results unless there's enough to make a difference in the race. And in this case, since we're voting for up to 3 people and electing up to 3 people for this from this commissioner district, the total number of write-ins would have to be more than the 3rd place finisher in order for us to look at potential write-in candidates. So just a heads up on how write-ins work in this particular election, so you can decide if that's what you want to do with your vote. Again, I'd recommend sticking with declared candidates or ensuring that you're looking at a declared write-in. So this is what the ballot looks like. Again, there are going to be instructions in the race itself, say vote for 3, and also in the panel that we have here on the left side of your ballot that talks about the Charter Review Commission is the exception to the vote for one rule. So you don't have to vote for all three. I'd certainly encourage people to study the candidates and make sure that they're supporting candidates that they want to see on the commission. But if you want to just vote for two, you could do that, or one. That is an option. You can't vote for more than three. If you vote for more than three, we call that an overvote, and then your vote will not be accepted for any of those candidates. So just bear in mind the rules are important here when we're looking at this particular race. So this is what the ballot's going to look like. You're probably wondering, well, how do I learn about any of these candidates? They're just names on a ballot right now to me. And with that, I'd say, you're going to be getting a voter's pamphlet in the mail starting next week, just before the ballots arrive. And in that voter's pamphlet, we will have each of the candidates for Charter Review Commission listed, and they have an opportunity to provide biographical information and to write a statement. And let's see if I'll have to probably stop sharing and reshare real quick to see if I can pull a quick copy of that up for you to take a look at. So here's the format. You have the candidate's name, their picture. Again, they're going to be in the same order that they appear on your ballot, and they'll have an opportunity to place some biographical information about their elected experience or other professional experience, their education, any community service that they want to highlight, and then a statement about why they're running and what they hope to do or hope to accomplish as a Charter Review Commissioner. And so this will be a good resource for folks. It's not the only resource. You'll notice that there is contact information provided as well. So you can certainly go to a candidate's website if they have it, or as a former candidate, people would call me on the phone. So you've got phone numbers and emails. So those are options as well. I think you have the ability to do as much research as you want on these candidates to try to determine who would best represent your interests on the Charter Review Commission. Ballots again will go out next week, 18 days prior to the election, and on election night we will release initial election results. That'll represent probably about 50 to 60% of the total votes in the election, and then in the days following election day we'll continue to count ballots, and we'll certify our election results 21 days after the November 4th election. So at that point, then the commissioners can be seated. If for instance there's any close race, we'll be looking at the how close the third and fourth place candidates are together. Typically, when we're considering recounts, we would look at the first and second place finishers, but because we're voting for 3 commissioners in each council district, we'll be looking at the third and fourth place finishers to determine if we have any recounts that we have to do. If the first and second place candidates in any particular council district are close, we're not going to do a recount to determine order of finishing within the top 3. So that's typical of any multi-vote races. So again, you're going to get a ballot that just has those candidates that you're going to vote for. It will only have your district, and I'd encourage you to do some research and participate in this election. It's certainly important. The charter is something that we refer to quite frequently in our office because it does have those rules around elections and how we elect our county executive positions and county council members.
Well, Garth, thank you for that. I want to say how lucky and fortunate we are in Snohomish County and actually in Washington State to have that voters pamphlet, because it really is a terrific resource. And I also want to applaud you and your staff. just for folks that are listening, you might not realize that in this election, this current election in Snohomish County, there are over 180 different races. And you can imagine the complexity of putting that wonderful document together. So Garth, thank you for that. Do we have any questions, Carin? I'm wondering if anyone has any questions specifically for Garth around how they tabulate or anything involved in actually selecting the winner or marking your ballot. Carin, do we have anyone out there with questions? And you may not. Garth explained it pretty well. There you go. But folks are listening. I can see that folks are out there and listening. Garth, here's a piece of election trivia that folks don't know. You mentioned that the order of folks on the ballot is not alphabetical and not based on how candidates file. So how do you figure out the order of the names on the ballot?
So after filing week, we reorder the alphabet by randomly picking Scrabble tiles to determine what letter of the alphabet should be first. So rather than going A to Z, our alphabet may end up after the candidate filing week going from J to B. And all the other letters are distributed in between, and we reorder all the candidates and all races based on that new alphabet that we've drawn.
And I will say that is a wonderful low-tech process. There is literally a bingo spinner in the auditor's office with A through Z Scrabble tiles in there. And you go in, you spin it, you pick one out, and that's the order. So if you ever wondered how that happens, that's how it happens. It's completely random. It's actually I had the privilege of doing that because the League of Women Voters actually comes in, and we're your representative for nonpartisan help, and we go just pick those numbers out randomly. That's how it happens.
Yeah, there's somebody with a Scrabble game missing 27 tiles.
But it works, it's a simple, very effective way to have that work. So that's how that order happens. We get asked that a lot. So let's go back to the slides. Carin, if anything comes up, please let us know. I want to just go through slides that again shows you now. So now your folks will be elected. And what happens next? Well, they actually take office in January of next year. Folks will take office and they will begin their meetings and begin their process. And next slide, Dave. So as they work through this process, then they will then begin to actually hold meetings in the public. So they will schedule their meetings and begin to work on proposed changes to the charter. And we're going to talk in just a sec with Liz and Carin about what's going to happen in those meetings and how we, the public, can access them. And they will come up with a list of recommendations. And once that list is agreed upon by the commission, we, the voters, are then going to say yes or no. So the commission is not deciding. The commission is putting choices in front of us as voters. And a year from now, in 2026, we're going to be deciding on which of those we want to accept. So I want to ask Carin and Liz, and Dave, you could stop sharing now. I want to ask Carin and Liz a little bit about the rules of the road for the commission itself, because there isn't a lot written necessarily in the Snohomish County Charter about how the group actually works. So Liz, in Whatcom County, now you were the chair. How did you become the chair of the review commission?
Well, that was a surprise to me, I will say, and something that I did not know. There is not necessarily a training manual for this, although I'm working with our auditor on some recommendations for the next team, because I didn't realize that. So the person in Whatcom County, and I think Snohomish County shares this right now, is that the person who receives the most votes countywide convenes the first meeting. And I was very honored to be that person in Whatcom County. And so I knew I was going to convene. I think the tradition in Whatcom County has been to elect the convener as the chair. And that's just been sort of the way it goes. It could go any other way. We held an election in our first meeting. And I was honored again to be elected to be the chair. But Carin mentioned earlier that the commission itself sets the rules. And so we do actually have an amendment proposed that the convener will have specific rules laid out for the first meeting, because it can be, if you're unfamiliar with the process, it can be a little bit daunting. You've got 15 commissioners. Most of us don't know each other prior to this process, and you've got the public watching, and you've got media, and so it's a lot to walk into unprepared. I think we did it real well, but it was very public, and I think that's a positive thing. Certainly, there's a lot of you can choose Robert's rules, you can choose other ways of structuring your meetings, but all of those things are unknown before you get started. So it is this kind of wild and organic process that I'm so lucky to have been a part of. And I don't know that you could do it any less. I don't know that it could go any more smoothly, because it is something that's so new to most people who are participating. We're lucky to have a couple of commissioners who had served before, and they had a lot to offer. But yeah, that's how we did our process. And it would not have surprised me or disappointed me if a different chair had been elected, but I think that's just been over the years how they do it. So that's what ended up happening for us.
Yeah, I appreciate that description of wild and organic. I think, can we rate that? That's wonderful. A wild and organic process that actually worked. Carin, do you remember, now you're going back 10 years? How did it unfold for you in
That's
Snohomish
right.
County?
It was 10 years ago. So it's really nice to hear that the process still is so wild and organic, right? So what was really interesting on the commission when I first joined was that the commission really does get to decide how it operates, independent of any existing processes. It is wonderful to always have institutional knowledge from commissioners that have been on the commission before. And so that's always helpful when, as Liz was mentioning, it can be a lot for some that are uninitiated into this process. What we did decide to do in Snohomish County in 16 is we set up the multi-step tiered process for reviewing items, decided how we wanted the process for advancing them for further analysis, and then how to finally get them into our proposals, as well as deciding how to elect the chair. And so we did that way, and there's records on that. But the new council that's going to be coming in January can decide their own process, depending on what seems right for them to adopt at the time.
That is interesting. And I'm thinking about the fact that you have 15 people coming together, Liz, as you mentioned, who have likely never worked together before, not unlike really any board or commission that comes together. Were there processes that you went through that sort of helped you to get to know each other at all? Was that a piece of your work in any way, either Liz or Carin?
Well, I made an effort to meet with all of the commissioners before we were sworn in, because I knew at least I would be convening the meeting. And so I wanted to have a meal or a cup of coffee and just find out different people's perspectives on this process we're about to do. We do operate under quorum rules. So for our team, that meant 7 or fewer at a time. But also, I think there's something lovely about not caucusing or trying to do anything outside of the public view. I love how public and transparent this process is. And so I will say I got to know commissioners over time just out of necessity, but most of the socializing and kind of finding out what people's priorities were happened for us before we were sworn in. And after that, as the chair, I took really seriously the mandate to be fair and balanced. And so I didn't want to have a lot of extra meetings or what could be seen as doing sort of agreements outside of the public view, which makes it very exciting because oftentimes you don't know what's going to happen until you're in the meeting. But I think that's just right. I actually really loved that because it was very clear that we hadn't done a whole lot of decision-making processes outside those public spaces.
And Carin, Chase, was that true in Snohomish County? Talk a little about that.
So as I think one thing that you think about, people who run for this and to be a commissioner and review our county's constitution have a real deep respect. Well, I'm assuming we'll have a really deep respect for the public service, right? And so if you have gone through this entire process and are elected, what we found was there was a deep commitment to collaboration. We had a lot of different viewpoints and people coming from different spaces, but we made a real effort to be collaborative and respectful. And it it was intentional on every person in that commission to do that and be really representative of what they were bringing forward from their community. And so, while I don't believe we did any, particular meetings to talk about that, we infused this and brought this into the discussion, particularly when we were debating proposals that some may feel very strongly about and others didn't, and whether they were going to come through. And we had standing on our agendas preliminary discussions of these proposals so that we'd always be prepared to come and discuss whatever proposals had been submitted by them, because we had 42 and we had to narrow it down quite a bit. And you can imagine with a group of 15 people that you have to have some order and a sense of respect that we will listen to everyone and think about a really good, fair process to make sure that every voice is heard. So, I think that with the interest of being a commissioner, that comes with a sense of responsibility and collaboration. And so that's why I really celebrate this process. And it's also really fun to hear about as we were researching some of the ways we were doing things, wanted to set up our process in Snohomish County, how other counties were doing it. And that's why I'm so thankful that we've got Liz from Whatcom sharing how some of the other counties have approached this more recently, because you just did this just now.
Absolutely. Well, so, and I'm interested about this, the process of people actually submitting their recommendations. So it sounds to me, Carin, in Snohomish County, you actually had, so they would submit in writing their initial proposal or what they were wanting for you to all talk about and think about.
Yeah, what we did, we set up meetings, we set up monthly meetings, and we met in each county, any council, every council district, so that we would be with the people, it'd be a little more accessible. We set a deadline for, I believe it was in April, to get all the submissions in. So as we would go to each jurisdiction, we would publicize that we were there. We would invite people to come to our meetings. We would invite presentations so that we could get as many folks participating as possible. And so as we did that, the proposals would come in, and of course, commissioners can also submit their own proposals. So we had the process as long as we had it in by April, but and on our standing agenda was review, since there were going to be so many.
Now, where were you meeting out in the various districts? Were you in libraries or?
Yes, we met in libraries. I think it was mainly libraries. And I remember we were talking about this earlier. One thing that impacted how many folks came was how rainy it was, right? So we were trying to make sure we met early enough so that after work folks can come, hopefully cross our fingers that it's not going to be pouring down rain. But to that end, we also had a way to participate online.
Oh, you did. Okay. So where these tended to be evening meetings, it sounds like.
Yeah, to participate, to submit proposals online. This was
Okay.
pre-COVID, so not everybody was quite so comfortable with Zoom, right?
That's true. So Liz, you were doing this now in post-COVID time. So were they hybrid as well? How did you deal with that?
Yeah, our meetings were hybrid on Zoom, and we're the first commission to have now video record. We always had audio recordings people could go back and listen to, but now you can go back and watch. And we also chose a model, like Carin describes, of meeting in each of the 5 council districts equitably. We started in the county seat, which is in Bellingham, but then we met all over the county. We were lucky to be invited by the Nooksack tribe to meet in their community center, which was beautiful. And libraries also were a popular choice because they have internet access. And so, yeah, we had a hybrid model. And that also allowed us, when we did some deeper dive into issues like ranked choice voting, we invited people from other cities across the country who have these sort of models of voting that could give testimony about how it's going for them and what they might recommend. So it kind of did open
That's
up
interesting.
that possibility to have. And then definitely people do sometimes still find it more accessible if they've got kids or for whatever reason it's raining. They don't want to get in the car and drive. So we had a pretty robust public participation through the Zoom process. People would tell me all the time that they were watching the meetings. And I think that's lovely to provide that accessibility. And then we had pretty strong participation in person too, I think, partially because ranked choice voting was one of the more often discussed proposals, and people were really interested in figuring out what that means. And we also had some proposals to change our district model. So to go back to 3 council districts was one proposal. And I think the public was just very engaged, understanding that that could change the way that our county council works over time. So I was delighted just to see that this kind of what I thought was an obscure thing became sort of a very hot topic in our county over the last several months.
And were folks also able, both in Snohomish and Whatcom County, to submit pieces online? Could they submit recommendations online as well?
Yeah,
And how did you make sure that I mean, everybody read those? What was the process for review?
But we hired staff, right? So there was so we had a staffer that would help keep track of those things. And I just want to just swing back to the public participation and now post-COVID and the lessons we've learned on being more accessible to folks that wouldn't normally be able to come to a meeting, like parents and those things. So this is what's exciting about, since we do this every 10 years, illustrates some of the things that change and why the flexibility of creating your own rules, I think, is really important for each commission.
Right. And we were lucky to be given county emails. That was one of the first asks of the commission, so that it's separate from our personal emails, so we could just keep track and keep focused. And we got a lot of public comment that way. And we had asks to consider proposal ideas. We didn't get any formal proposals from members of the public, but there is an initiative process where members of the public can go and change the charter themselves after gathering a number of signatures. So that is an avenue that the public can take at any time. But for this process, it seemed to be more like personal testimony in favor of a proposal that they may have heard from a commissioner. But I love what you're saying, Carin, about having a deadline. That was a lesson learned for us. I think we had like 11 proposals in our final meeting before everything had to go to the auditor, and it was a very long meeting. We may have gotten done around midnight. And so when you said that, I was like, aha, that's one way. If everybody knows, I think April sounds like that would be a heavy lift, but maybe May or June.
Well, it was just so you know, we did have many proposals on our last agenda item also. So even though we had an early deadline, there's robust conversations about and discussions about all these.
Right.
I heard the mention of Auditor, and I want to ask Garth, when, you obviously you have to get these proposals on the fall ballot. So in Snohomish County, when are you requiring that they have their finalized their requirements or their options?
State law actually establishes primary day as the final day for submissions to be received by the auditor's office for the November general election ballot. And so while commissioners are elected to a 1-year term, if they're going to try to hit that next year for ballot measures, really the work has to be done in those first 6 to 7 months.
Right. And to get you those recommendations. And then are you, Carin and Liz, once those recommendations are in, are you essentially done, or what happens are you shepherding them through the elections process? What happens after that you've sort of submitted to the auditor?
Well, for me, it's things like this. We'll have 3 different community meetings in Whatcom County. We had our first one last Saturday. One will be in Spanish for the members of the county that don't speak English, just to go through the 12 proposals that we did have come through our commission so that people can ask questions and engage with it. And then I think there are like the League of Women Voters and our city club here and different groups that have asked for us to come and speak. Just it's really community education. I think the work of reviewing the charter, although we could reconvene at any time before December 31st, and that our commission left that up to me. I think we thoroughly reviewed it to the extent that this group of people could. And so I don't know that I would be motivated to do that unless there was a lot of public input around that. But the things that we turned over a lot of stones as a group of people, and I feel confident that anything that would have passed did. And then it's just up to the voters in a couple of weeks here to find out what becomes part of the charter.
It is. And Carin, I imagine it was the same for you. It was actually education and outreach to voters at that point.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Very much so. We did put on our books a meeting right before the election, and then scheduled one afterwards for any follow-up that we wanted to do as a commission. But essentially, I think Liz described it well.
Well, I want to share the next slide. We've got a couple of slides to show folks on what were the recommendations that came. And so this first is going back again, 10 years ago, the 2000 Charter Review Commission, that they were elected in 2015. They did their work in 2016. And you see here, there were 42 different amendments that were considered. 20 of those sort of then made it through the vetting process to actually, it sounds like, have full discussion by the review commission, and 7 were submitted to voters. And we'll just show you what those were. Again, this is 10 years ago. So Dave, let's see the next slide. And we'll, yeah, so you can see, let folks know, these are the 7, and of the 7, voters approved 6 and rejected 1. And that is the voters' purview to do. Carin, do you want to just briefly comment on
Sure.
any of these that stand out to you?
Absolutely. Well, of the 42, I did, to refresh my memory, went through the quick list of what we had. So we also had things submitted like, those to make it through, like that did or did not, we considered like moving animal control to the sheriff's office or lowering the age of county office from 21 to 18. I remember robust discussion about that. And then enlarging the council from 5 to 7 members. And so things like that is what we would be discussing in the meetings before we got to the 7 amendments that actually were submitted to the voters, which had at least 8 members of the commission voting for them.
That was a question I had for you. So if for you, it was a majority vote, basically, of the commission, that's what ended up on the ballot.
Yeah. And then,
okay.
And so, of those 42, it was a lot of really good discussion to get down to these 7.
I'll
right?
bet. I'll bet.
And of these, each of these had to pass by over 50%. So obviously it was in tune with what the public was wanted. The one that was requiring additional county meetings and hearings, that passed with 81%. And so I think that really did reflect that the desire of the community to want to engage with the governance and those that are making the decisions. So that is one that just struck me as something that was very important for us to pay attention to. People want to participate, right? And think about how that works. On establishing the Commission on Human Rights. Now, the Human Rights Commission had been in a test period for 6 years, but it was about to sunset. And so enshrining it in the charter made it part of the governance of Snohomish County. So that was one thing that we were actually really proud of too. But what's is telling that the revising the county redistricting process passed with 75%, and these are really high numbers. So paying attention to what people are paying attention to, and showing the interest in these, I think demonstrates that the commission was responsive to what the public was asking, and in our review of how appropriate the charter was to the times, right?
Yeah. And it also, I think, is a testament to the fact that times do change, and that a document is not meant necessarily to be static. And so that it does take review to, so keep improving, right? We're always iterating and improving.
Right, but we think of this as a living document.
Yes.
Right? And so as a living document, we should be reviewing it and nurturing it and taking a look at it once in a while.
Yep. So let's take a look at Whatcom County. You were busy. Dave, show us the next slide. Interestingly enough, in Whatcom County, they also considered 42 amendments. And I have to tell you, I double checked that and I said, really? Both of you considered 42? Yes, 42 were considered. 30 plus had full discussion, and then 12 are on the ballot. And I know this is an issue that's going on right now, Liz. So I think you don't necessarily need to talk about them unless there's something specific that you just want to bring out about this process and how you got here.
Yeah, well, one thing that's unique about Whatcom County is that our county council 10 years ago changed the charter so that we have to have a supermajority. So we needed 10 out of 15 to approve anything that would go to the ballot. And that's it's a right that the county council has in the charter, but it did make it really difficult for some of the more progressive things that I think some of us really wanted to see, like ranked choice voting, changing some of the language from citizen to people, that kind of thing, that I think many of us really supported. We couldn't get to 10. We got to 9 out of 15 on many. So I think those can come about a different way, maybe the initiative process or some other process. But many of these are really just looking at what does the state law say around auditing or around financial timelines, those kinds of things, and making sure that our charter is in line with the state law, which it has to be anyway, but to do it in a way that is so public so that people can see, we're not really reinventing the wheel here. We just want to make sure that all of the things that our county government is participating in won't come back later and say, well, that was out of step with state law. And so the educational process with our county executive and some of our county council members who came to participate was really good because they're very busy and they might not have the time to really analyze, is this process that we're living every day in line with what the state has said over the last 10 years? So a lot of them really are just mechanisms to get us more up to date. And then, there's things like having an office of the ombuds, which many cities across the state have, to try to give the people a place where they can go, kind of a third party, that they can get their needs heard. And so I'm really excited about that. And also 12 is a lot. And so mostly what I'm wanting to do is just help voters understand, is this a make or break it, or is this really more of like a technical amendment? A lot of them are technical. So yeah, and I think having 12 come through is more than we've had in the past. But I think it is because we had someone who works with the State Budget Commission on our Charter Review Commission. And so he was very aware of the things that might not be fully in line with state law. So I think those ones will be hopefully easier for people to understand. And then the other ones will have a little bit more discussion around, is this something we want to prioritize in our charter or not?
Yeah. And it's interesting, if there are budgetary implications on any of these, how does that figure in, or does it figure into the voting process or any of that? Either of you want to comment on that?
Well, go ahead, Carin.
Well, I was thinking about the ombuds.
Go ahead, Liz.
Probably means you have to hire staff, right?
Yeah, there's a couple in here that would have budget implications, and I think the language of the amendment leaves it pretty open because the executive sets our budget and then the council votes on it. But it talks about appropriate staffing. It talks about, just like our current charter talks about, reimbursing commission members. They're not paid, but reimbursing for reasonable expenses. That's wholly undefined, and we discussed that a lot. What's reasonable? I don't believe that anyone did seek or receive reimbursement in our process this year, but those kinds of ambiguities, I think, do leave that door open in a budget crisis here, or perhaps if there's a little more money. But I think the will is there to establish something, even if it's a half FTE, something very small, just to look at how could this work. But it does, understandably, that does require some work with the county government to find out. Nobody wants to talk about wiggle room right now. So we'll see how it goes. But really, it is up to the voters if they want that to be prioritized in the budget.
And so let me ask, I'm sorry, Carin, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so, as Whatcom's doing the Office of Ombuds, we also did that, but we just called it the public advocate. And so it's the same thing with, there would be a budget implication. We also had at that time, updating the language. It's like we had our policy on non-discrimination too, and those did pass. So I think that we're all in good times on recognizing the changing times and the needs for this kind of access.
Yeah. Well, and I want to ask Garth, when these do make it to the ballot a year from now, what level of detail are the voters going to see as they vote on make their choices?
Yeah, so it is an abbreviated description for sure that goes before the voters, but they will be provided information on where to find more details. Typically, they'll have a pro and con committee that gets appointed to support or raise concerns about a particular measure, just like any other measure on the ballot. So, yeah, I think you're going to go to your voters pamphlet to learn as much as you can, and then seek those opportunities where the commission is either talking about what the proposal means, or the advocates are out talking about their particular perspective on a amendment.
So is there a complete there's the title of it, but is this, I'm thinking of a piece of legislation where you'll actually see the full and complete text of what's being proposed. Do they go into that level of detail, or does it tend to be more general?
They're, if I remember correctly, they are an abbreviated version of that because they need to follow the exact format requirements under law for ballot measures. They will have the complete text available of what that will do to the charter and what it will say in the charter. But that, depending on how long that is, that will not necessarily be before voters in its complete text. And maybe Liz has some ideas of what's happening up in Whatcom right now on that.
Yeah, I mean, our county staff are fantastic. And so they set up a charter section of their website where even as the proposals were coming in, they listed those and then highlighted what language would be changed. And they had an explanatory statement. And so there's a lot of detail on our county government website. That was work that is not required. And I'm so grateful that they did it because it's a huge amount of work when we're talking about 42 proposals. And I think what you can find now through the auditor's website is like what Garth was saying. You've got your pro and con statement. You can see where the language would change. You can kind of do a deeper dive. But yeah, I think the section of our county government website that it's all things Charter Commission is totally new, and that's just because they wanted to do that. So it's amazing. It's a great thing to look at if maybe Snohomish is looking to do a similar thing. It's so helpful.
Or if voters are thinking about what they might want to suggest to the commission, because that'll be a year from now. But of course, now the process is if folks are thinking about recommendations they'd like to make, let's get the commissioners elected and then submit recommendations. But I want to move. I'm watching our time. We don't have a lot of time left, but I'd love to hear from you. So voters are going to be selecting these folks. Carin Mattson, yes, did you have something you wanted to add? Yes, please do. Please do.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, good.
But a person submitted a question several minutes ago. I've requested clarification on what the question means exactly and haven't gotten it, but I think the responders might be able to read between the lines. There's an acronym here I wanted clarification on. The question is this: King County is preparing to run an RCV for Seattle in 2027. When it comes time for Snohomish County to implement RCV, do you see any significant differences in King and Snohomish County in the ability to implement RCV? Your guess is as good as mine what the questioner is asking. It's probably ranked choice voting. I was hoping to have the questioner speak it to me in the chat, but answer it as if it were, and if the questioner clarifies, I'll let you know.
I think that one's for Garth.
Yeah, so I believe that's ranked choice voting, and King County's preparing to do this for the city of Seattle because the city of Seattle adopted a charter amendment. So it would require an amendment to Snohomish County's charter to have county positions handled through a ranked choice voting method. Our position in the auditor's office is that if the people ask for it, we'll figure out how to accomplish it. It has been done in other jurisdictions, but it's really the voters' decision on whether or not they want to have a ranked choice voting option on the ballot. So I think that's certainly something that the Charter Review Commission could discuss, and I think have a robust conversation about.
Absolutely. So I have a feeling we might run a little long, and I hope that's okay with our panelists if you're able to stay for a few extra minutes, because we and again, please continue to put questions. Thank you, viewers, for putting questions in the chat. I'm curious now to move to a discussion about the qualities that actually make a good and effective commissioner. And I think this is the tough part, because as Garth, as you mentioned, we'll see maybe community experience and governmental experience. We'll see that. And again, 49 candidates. I do have to tell our viewers that the league considered trying to do forums, and there is just not a way to do a forum with for 49 candidates. So it's difficult. But I'm wondering, I'd love to hear from Carin and Liz. You've sat in these meetings, you've worked with commissioners, you've debated and come to consensus. From your perspective, what is the experience or skill set that is really helpful for someone who's going to step into that position. And Carin, maybe I'll start with you if that's okay.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. And I know we're coming up on time, but I thank the league for even considering having candidate forums for the commission, even so, because this is a really important elected position. And for me, I think that people who are good listeners and really critical thinkers and have like at least the basic understanding of local governance is really important, right? But bringing the values of commitment to inclusion, respect for community input, and a willingness to learn are some of the things that I think are really important that someone will bring as those skills, because this is a collaborative effort, right? There's 15 people who likely, as you mentioned, have not been on a board together, and a variety of different experiences. And so being open to that kind of collaboration is, I think, one of the important skill sets that you bring. And as you know, in large groups like this, it's important to know how to listen and to advocate well for your own position, right? I learned a lot on this commission from the experience of those that had like debate experience and working in these collaborative bipartisan spaces on how you show up. And so showing up with a willingness to seek first to understand and then move forward on these proposals, because this is collectively our county, right? And this is how we all want to move forward and model how we want our county to run its governance, and the people that we're electing to make those decisions for us. And so just that's kind of the broad basis. It's
Yeah.
helpful if you've had some board experience, but we help each other on that.
Okay, that's good to know. Liz, what do you want to add to that?
Yeah, thanks, Carin. That was a really good overview. I think for our county, it was unique because it was the first time that a woman had been elected chair. And there was some energy around that I think some people don't behave themselves with respect. And that, honestly, I had a friend give me a gavel for my second meeting, and it was a tool that I used sparingly, but to be curious and respectful, but still to hold the line, because it is, we have to get through these things, and sometimes it isn't pleasant. So I wouldn't want future commissioners to think that if they're having a hard time, that they're doing it wrong, because I actually think we have, contention is so natural in these group spaces where everyone cares so much about the outcome, but we don't necessarily agree on how to get there. And so I would recommend for folks who have maybe a hotter temper that they really check in with themselves about whether governance is for them right now. Because it is really hard. It's hard to maintain kindness and respect in an environment when people are disruptive and outright rude. And that happened a small handful of times. And so for me, having the gavel, having a staff that was very dedicated to making sure that we maintain at least a base level, no shouting, no racism, that kind of thing. Those are agreements that I think we have to just stay tethered to. And what, for me, my favorite experiences with commissioners were not necessarily the politically aligned, but the people who could operate with humor and respect and an understanding that we're not here to tear each other down. So we had one or two who did seem committed to grandstanding in a very negative way, but over time that really dissipated. And I had people tell me later that they really enjoyed watching that process of how we model respect and dignity oftentimes brings that to the space. So yeah, and I think it just takes a whole lot of curiosity and just understanding, this isn't the be all end all of governance. It's such a basic thing that it really should be for all people. And so making sure that we don't put our own needs or perspectives in front of that, but making sure that people in the room who have come to participate and give public comment, which we had at every meeting, feel welcome and feel safe. So yeah, it can be a heavy lift, but I like to think, it sounds like in Snohomish, you've had really good experiences. So it really just depends on who's in the group, and then the leadership being willing to draw a line if a line needs to be drawn.
And to build on what you were talking about there, Liz, remember the commission gets to set their own rules, right, of governance. And in that, it's very common now to set meeting norms and expectations and to ground the meeting in that. And that could be something that this next commission, because, racism, misogyny, that kind of behavior has no place in governance. And so if we need to remind ourselves of that, that's not a bad thing sometimes.
Well, and we are, as we know, in highly polarized times.
Yeah.
And I do wonder, in your experience, and I know we're running a little long, and I hope folks will stay with us. We'll wrap up here in just a moment. But I do wonder how many commissioners come in with an intention, that and is that even a bad thing? That you come in saying there's something that you think you want to change, and this is the way that you change it. So I wonder if you want to comment on that, on folks coming and saying this is what I'm going to change, and how do you deal with that?
Well, for our team, I know that over half of us really did want to try to get ranked choice voting to the ballot. I think there were some assumptions and fears that created that I couldn't have seen ahead of time. And so I think there were political priorities for sure, but also just, even though it's a nonpartisan office, I think that people had their guard up about maybe we have a majority progressive, or maybe we have, this many conservatives. There was a lot of analysis of that I think was not totally necessary, but people did come with their own bag full of prior experience and fears about, what could happen when, I'm a very progressive person and also female identified. Is this going to be a disaster? And I think in the end, it wasn't. I think we did a really good job. But I think there was a lot of, because Whatcom County is a very small place and many of us have been in political work for a very long time. I think there might have been some preconceived notions about, well, this is going to be really radical, and then it's not, because it's the county charter. There isn't really anything you can do that's going to raise a lot of eyebrows. It's basic governance. It's so safe. And that's what I love about it, is that we can do it well together, regardless of what we might be doing in other spaces in our lives. So I think there was a lot of political will and assumption up front. I am a little sad about some of the things that I don't think passed because of where we're at politically. For example, changing "we the citizens of Whatcom County" to "we the people of Whatcom County" is so beautiful and so in line with our Constitution, but we couldn't get it passed. And I think that has a lot to do with the moment we're in right now. Hopefully next time that will be different.
And there will be 10 years from now where it can get revisited. Yeah. Carin, anything else, any thoughts you have in this space here?
I think that, even just in reading that voters statement that Garth had shown us, it's like commissioners are coming with great ideas and fresh ideas. So I expect that if someone wants to serve on the commission, they have read the charter and have some ideas. And so can bring them forward to 15 colleagues who have done similar work. And I would expect that, right? And that, I think that shows good enthusiasm. And, it may be something that gets legs and enthusiasm, and it may be something that gets pushed down the road. We did have 42 proposals and 7 made it. So, and so that just tells you there's lots of great ideas. And, one of the things that we like to say is, how does it go? It's like, we can do anything, we just can't do everything. And so, that's kind of how I look at all these proposals. It's like, these are great. We just can't do it all right this second.
Well, I think those are great words to end on. And I just want to observe that in the end, this is such a fundamentally democratic process. I mean, it's all of us coming together to say, how do we want to be governed? And beyond the commissioners, the public as well. And the public will have opportunity then to present their recommendations and to listen to the debates and to give feedback to the commission. So it's really one of the most fundamental sort of proofs and demonstrations of how democracy should work. So that really is exciting. That's actually exciting.
I agree 100%. And we do have a commission page on the website. So all the 2016 work is available for folks to take a look at. And, I'm sure all 15 of us would be happy to answer any questions anyone has.
In fact, Dave, I'll ask you to bring up, there is a slide where folks can go to find more information, and we're going to wrap it up now. Thanks for hanging with us, our folks out there. Carin, were there any final questions coming to us? Thank you very much. And so you see on the screen, there is a Charter Commission webpage, and you can find it on the Snohomish County website. You can just Google Charter Review Commission and it'll come up. And we also have a very simple explainer page on the League of Women Voters of Snohomish County website. So I want to thank our panelists. I think this has been a wonderful discussion. So thank you to Garth, thank you to Carin, thank you to Liz for taking the time, first of all, to do the work too, and then to join us tonight to help and explain this. And as you all have heard tonight, we will be making our decisions on the 49 candidates running for Charter Review Commission. And on behalf of the League, we want to thank our panelists and really all those candidates for choosing to run for office. We hope that this presentation has helped you think about how to make your decisions and learn more about the process itself. There are good resources for you to explore, to gather information about the candidates. You heard from Garth. Snohomish County voters pamphlets will be mailed along with your ballot starting just a little over a week, October 17th. This presentation has been recorded and will be available on the League YouTube channel. So if you watched it and you think folks would like to learn, please let them know it's here for them to watch. Also on the YouTube channel are our 20 candidate forums that the League held in Snohomish County for both the primary and the general elections. And we encourage you to watch those. Many of your local communities are holding forums, and they're happening now. We're right in that session. So please be out looking to candidates. We also encourage you to explore vote411.org, which is sponsored by the League. That's another good source of voter information. And those ballots need to be in by Tuesday, November 4th. So we always end by saying, please be a voter. So again, thank you to our panelists and to all for watching. This concludes our presentation.
Thanks so much, Carin.
Thank you all. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Dave. Great conversation. You know, we probably could have